The office had rules, unwritten, but enforced with a kind of invisible authority that made people obey without question. Rule number 1. Never speak to Mr. Harrington unless he speaks to you first. The man was a legend in the business world, a self-made billionaire with a reputation for ruthlessness. Even executives who'd worked under him for years still kept their eyes low when he passed by. So when Samuel, the new black janitor, started his night shift, he quickly learned the quiet fear that floated in the building's air. No one dared to meet the boss's gaze, much less strike up a conversation. Samuel didn't mind. He had 3 kids to feed, bills stacked higher than the lobby chandeliers, and his life had taught him that some doors stayed closed, no matter how hard you knocked. But children have no patience for invisible rules. One rainy Tuesday, Samuel's kids, Amara, 9, and little Isaiah, 6, had to come to work with him. Their school had closed unexpectedly, and Samuel couldn't afford to miss a shift. He told them to sit quietly in the staff lounge, away from the marble corridors and polished glass where the important people walked. Of course, they didn't listen. At exactly 6:14 p.m., Mr. Harrington stepped out of the executive elevator. His long black coat dripped rainwater onto the Italian tile. Conversations froze. A secretary mid-laugh suddenly remembered an urgent email. Even the security guard pretended to be checking his watch. And then Isaiah appeared. Sticky hands, bright smile, a fistful of crumpled strawberry candies he'd been saving since Halloween. "Hi, mister. You want one?" the boy asked, holding one up as if offering treasure. The lobby went dead silent. A janitor's child had just broken the cardinal rule, spoken to the untouchable man. Worse, offered him candy. Every employee present held their breath, waiting for the explosion, but it never came. Harrington's sharp eyes studied the boy for a long, unreadable moment. Slowly, he reached down, took a candy, and unwrapped it. The sound of cellophane cracking in the silence was deafening. Then, to everyone's shock, the corner of his mouth lifted in what could only be called a smile. "Thank you," he said, 2 words no one in that building had ever heard from him before. From that day forward, something shifted. The unspoken wall between Harrington and the staff began to crack, just a little. People whispered about it for weeks, wondering what it meant. But Samuel knew better than to assume kindness from the powerful was without reason. And 3 days later, when Harrington requested a private meeting with him in his top-floor office, Samuel's hands trembled as he knocked on the door, because he had no idea whether this was an opportunity or the beginning of trouble that would change his life forever. Samuel had never been on the 50th floor before. The elevator ride felt like a slow ascent to a different world. The carpet was thicker, the air faintly scented with leather and oak. Everything here whispered power. When he reached the double doors, Harrington's assistant gave him a look, half pity, half curiosity, before motioning him inside. The office was enormous, with glass walls revealing the city spread out like a glittering map. Behind a massive desk sat Mr. Harrington, not in his tailored suit, but in a plain sweater, sleeves pushed to his elbows. He didn't look up immediately, just gestured for Samuel to sit. "You've been working here 3 months, Harrington began, his voice calm but heavy, "and no one has ever told me your story." Samuel hesitated. "I just cleaned the floors, sir. Nothing much to tell." Harrington's eyes narrowed slightly, as though measuring the weight of that answer. "Your son, Isaiah, the candy he gave me, where did he get it?" The question caught Samuel off guard. From a bowl at home. Someone from church brought it over. There was a long pause. Harrington leaned back, fingers steepled. "Strawberry, in red cellophane. My mother used to keep those in a glass jar in our kitchen. She gave one to every guest, no matter who they were." His voice softened almost imperceptibly. "She died when I was 12. Samuel felt the air change. This was no business meeting. This was something else. Something raw. Harrington turned toward the window, as though the city lights could hide the flicker in his eyes. "Your boy reminded me of her. People think I built walls because I'm cold. Truth is," he stopped, then shook his head. "Never mind." Samuel shifted uneasily. "Sir, I didn't mean for..." Harrington cut him off. You've been underpaid for your work. That changes today. And he glanced back with a look Samuel couldn't quite read. There's another reason I called you here. One I can't explain, not yet. Samuel's pulse quickened. What reason? Harrington stood, walking toward a locked cabinet. He pulled out a thin, worn envelope and placed it on the desk between them. Inside was a faded photograph of a young black woman in a maid's uniform, holding a little boy with Harrington's unmistakable eyes. Samuel stared. "Sir, why are you showing me this?" Harrington's jaw tightened. "Because I think that boy might have been my brother." The room went still, and just as Samuel's mind began to race, Harrington said quietly, "But if I'm right, then someone has been lying to me my entire life." Samuel's fingers trembled as he held the photograph. The black and white image had that faded softness of time, but the woman's face was sharp in his memory. "Sir," his voice was barely a whisper, "I know this woman." Harrington leaned forward. "How?" Samuel swallowed hard. "Because that's my mother." For a moment, neither man spoke. The hum of the city below seemed to grow louder, as if every car horn and distant siren was waiting for the answer to a question neither had fully asked. Harrington's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted, shock maybe, or a flicker of recognition long buried. "My father employed her when I was a boy," he said slowly, "but I was told she left suddenly. No explanation. I never saw her again." Samuel's throat tightened. "She never talked about that job. And my mother, she hated secrets. But if she didn't tell me about you, about this, then it had to be something big." Harrington walked back to the cabinet, opening another drawer. This time he took out a folded letter, yellowed at the edges. "It's the only thing she left behind when she disappeared. My father kept it locked away. I found it after he died. I've read it 100 times and still don't understand it." He slid the letter across the desk. Samuel opened it carefully, eyes scanning the neat handwriting. "You told me the truth would ruin everything. Maybe it will. But one day, when the boy is old enough, he deserves to know who he really is and who you really are." No signature, no date. But Samuel recognized the curve of the letters, the way the Y, and you curled like a ribbon. It was her handwriting. Samuel's voice cracked. "Sir, this doesn't make sense. Are you saying—" Harrington's jaw clenched. "I'm saying there's a chance we share more than a moment in a lobby. We might share blood." The weight of those words hit Samuel like a blow. His mind spun with questions. About his mother, about this man, about the truth that had been buried before he was even born. And then Harrington's tone shifted, low and urgent. "If I'm right, Samuel, then someone very powerful, made sure we never found out." Samuel's stomach dropped. "Who?" Harrington's gaze darkened. "The only person still alive who would know. And I can promise you, they won't want this truth coming out." Samuel sat frozen, the letter still in his hands. The air in the office felt heavier, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. "Who is it?" Samuel asked, voice low. Harrington walked to a window, staring at the rain streaking down the glass. "My father's lawyer, Martin Graves. He's been with the family for over 50 years. He was there when my mother died. He handled everything, and he's still alive." Samuel frowned. Why would a lawyer keep something like this quiet? Harrington's jaw tightened. "Because if my father had an illegitimate child, especially with a black woman in the 1970s, it would have destroyed his business, his reputation, everything. Graves would have buried the truth to protect the Harrington name." Samuel's chest burned with anger. "So you think he knew my mother had your father's child and hid it?" Harrington turned, his gaze sharp. "I don't think. I know. The question is what else he's hiding." They agreed to meet Graves together. But as Harrington picked up the phone to make the call, Samuel noticed something strange, an old photograph on the corner of the desk. It was of Harrington as a boy, standing beside a teenage girl Samuel had never seen before. Harrington saw Samuel staring. "That's Evelyn, my half-sister. She left home at 16 and never came back. No one talks about her." Samuel's brow furrowed. "She looks familiar." Before he could place it, Harrington's assistant burst into the office without knocking. something she had never done before. Her face was pale, eyes wide. "Sir, Martin Graves is dead. They found him in his home this morning." The room fell silent. Harrington slowly lowered the phone in his hand. Samuel felt a cold shiver crawl up his spine. The one man who might have answered their questions was gone. But before the silence could settle, the assistant hesitated, then added, "And someone left this for you." She handed Harrington a small, unmarked envelope. Inside was a single piece of candy, strawberry, wrapped in red cellophane. No note, no explanation. Harrington looked at Samuel, his expression unreadable. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "It's just beginning. The truth may be buried for years, but as a way of rising, often in the smallest, most unexpected ways. A simple act of kindness, like a child offering candy, can break walls that fear and prejudice built over decades. Power can silence voices, but it cannot erase the past. And when the past knocks on the door, you must decide whether to open it or keep living a lie. Subscribe for more interesting and powerful stories.